I think I was going to set up a little countdown thing, and I didn't turn that on.
Oh,
It was not
Oh
automatic.
well.
we did it
So
live.
we are actually doing it live. Okay, so I'm Sean. This is Kit and Serena, and we are going to be talking about labor issues. OurVoice.social. In case you're new and you don't know much about that yet, and also a bit about the future that we want to see both in labor and maybe in other aspects. So, um, anyone have a place they want to start? Okay. Well, labor is a pretty complicated issue. I think that labor ultimately goes back to just having to survive. Even on your own, you are laboring to, get food and shelter, take care of your family if you have one, um, things like that. But when you get to more of a structured society like we have, there is more of a division of labor where people aren't just doing everything just for themselves. They are doing things for other people and for themselves, and in exchange for the things that other people are doing. Um, I don't know of any way around that in society, but there, the way that's structured can be very different. Historically, for thousands of years, it's been, there's a king or something like that, and everyone works for that person basically. There might be some middle management lords or whatever, they take a cut, but everyone is laboring partly to feed themselves, but also to fund the state and the people in the chain above them. In the last few centuries, it's gone more to capitalism, where the government is kind of semi-separate, hopefully completely separate, but at least in our case, that's not true. But most of the labor is done by the masses of people on behalf of a few capitalists who put money into the system and believes that because of that, they should determine what everyone does and what they get out of it, and what they, as capitalists themselves, get out of it. And I don't believe that's the way it has to be. I don't think it's the best way for it to be, but maybe a good place to start the actual discussion of what's going on is just a bit of talking about what's going on right now. Anyone want to share some work stories about themselves or other people?
I have a lot of thoughts. I just can't pinpoint which one I want to start with. So, at least in the United States, I can't speak for other countries too well, other than my own studies and my friends that live in other places. We're in what most scholars would say is late stage capitalism, which, in my opinion, is really bad.
Yeah.
Because it's just like the what's the word? Class divide just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the rich just keep getting richer and the poor just keep getting poorer. And I feel like in a way we idolize these people that are like billionaires
Yeah,
As celebrities.
Because we think that we're going to become billionaires one day, which is just not gonna happen.
wealth
So-
inequality right now is about the same
Very
level as it was during the Gilded Age, which led to.
It's worse than
you
worse
know,
than during the French Revolution. It's actually
Well,
worse than that, which is just
what
wild.
was what was the Gilded Age? What was that era?
Oh yeah, sorry for
Um,
interrupting.
no, it's fine. Like, um, I I don't know exactly what the beginning and end of it would be, but basically the time where people got extremely wealthy from extracting natural resources here, and very few people were gaining the vast majority of those. Of the wealth from those resources that a lot of people were putting in the labor to extract. The people who were dying in the mines on a regular basis were, you know, not well paid. They were overworked. They were made sick by the things that they were mining or the conditions there. But the people who were funding the project obviously didn't have to do those things, but they got massively wealthy to the point where, you know, maybe they did in a way buy our governments, but it's kind of hard to believe that they survived as well as they did with people with that much wealth and power.
Oh,
I mean,
of
they
course.
had their own private security people or police like the Pinkertons and people like
Right.
that.
Yes. Well, and with that in mind, you could say that large corporations like Amazon could certainly be an example of that, with big warehouses where people are in a sort of way being worked to death. And interested in, like, maybe Serena's commentary on that, because she just mentioned, as I think you just said, as callers had said, late stage capitalism.
Yeah, and sorry, Serena, I didn't mean
No,
to
you're good.
go on that long. You can continue with what you were talking about if you remember.
My train of thought just totally went out the window. But I will say, also with that in mind, we're still doing that today.
Mhm.
Especially like Tesla, the company, and Elon Musk. They use child labor, or Apple does it too, abroad, where they send children, like not just teenager children, even though they're still children, no offense to anybody, but like little kids into mines, and they collapse constantly just to get what's it called? It starts with a Z, some metal. I don't remember what it was. That's in your phones and all tech, and they're doing that, and they're basically stealing from these countries. Literally, ugh, it's just bad. But yeah.
And
Anyways,
it's not just in tech, but there are a lot of food companies. Nestle has been sued by people who were enslaved working on farms that were producing things for them. That the lawsuits have largely been dismissed, unfortunately, due to supposedly not having standing or not being allowed to judge those things in the U.S. or whatever. But that's nonsense, I think. And regardless of the legal technicalities, it's obviously wrong that we are consuming products produced by slave labor.
yeah.
And we also have basically slave labor in prisons in the U.S. That was the exception that they made when freeing the slaves. Was we're still allowed to do whatever we want with people in prison, so
Yep.
they get paid often pennies an hour, like and then they're forced to put money that they make there, you know, because they don't have a lot of options, into paying for phone calls at exorbitant rates, and you know, food if they don't, if they want to eat anything but whatever is in the cafeteria, which is not necessarily great food. In some cases, it's intentionally not good food. You know, they have to pay like outrageous prices compared to what they are given, and I don't think it's reasonable or a good system. And you know, again, uh, American companies are profiting off of you know, using these people for labor.
Oh yes, considerably, and I could definitely drag the conversation off with prison labor conversations, especially
13th
because
Amendment.
yes, especially because like prisons are consistently used for like call centers, etc. Because prisoners can be used, as Sean just pointed out, for like not just like minimum wage, but like spectacularly below minimum wage for pennies on the dollar for their hours, and they have to sit in one place for forever, and they can sit there on the phone and take calls. But one of the worst things um, that is that is done to them is things in Arizona and California where they're used as firefighters, and
Yeah.
they're trained to be firefighters to fight forest fires and etc. But when they're finally released um, from prison, they can't take their training with them as firefighters. So when they leave, they can't take all of their training and their work having fought fires as a certification. So they can't go out and then become firefighters with forest fires, because their training and their certification or whatever they did in prison to fight fires doesn't go off with them.
That, and if you're a felon, they won't hire you.
Yep. Also, I
Which is a
wanted to.
big, big, big problem. And also reminds me of, like, the fact that that's kind of
That's
off
dangerous
topic.
work.
Never
No,
mind.
no, go for it, please.
Okay. I just want to have a small rant here. So I'm pro legalization for marijuana.
And we
Just
should be.
because, yeah. So I just want to throw that out there when I get into this. A lot of people,
It's
especially people of color, especially black men, get arrested for having marijuana on their person, and they become a felon. Now we're legalizing weed in a lot of states.
Mhm.
Those people that have been arrested for selling drugs can't get a job to do what they got arrested for and what they were good at doing. I mean, other than getting caught, I guess. Kind of ridiculous, in my opinion. Like, they know how to sell drugs. Let them do what they know how to do. I don't know.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point, because what's terrible, or one of the real, real, one of the terrific disasters of the legalization of cannabis right now is that minority cultures and minority communities helped pioneer the development of cannabis locally
Yeah.
and etc. And they're also being screwed out of the development of the businesses of it.
Don't we love
They're
that?
Yeah, of course. I mean that's they're because of the federal prohibition. Uh, and in some cases by the state as well, as it's being as the prohibition is being taken away at all levels. So it's just and it's like racism all the way down.
The way the system is set up in most states is not even good for like an average person who would want to start a business in that. you have to have a lot of money going into it and get lucky in a lottery or whatever to get a license, kind of like a liquor license, but you need, I think, a lot more money to start a cannabis business than, a bar. And I don't think it's an accident. I think that, it's been, like so many other things, pushed toward making money for the people who already have money, and everyone else has a choice to either work for them for whatever they can get, or I don't know. we don't have
It's
a
about
lot
keeping
of,
the poor's poor, yeah.
yeah.
Which I think is an example of something that's on topic, which has to do with labor.
Yes.
Working,
So
who you work for.
yeah, I was mentioning this off camera, so I'll just say it again. But my sister, also a lot of people are like this. Just finding a job in general is very difficult, even when you do have an education. So she doesn't have a bachelor's degree or anything like that, but she is educated. She has certified paralegal and also a realtor certification for that too. I think maybe she has an associate's in that, something like that. I don't know. I didn't totally pay attention because she's my sister. But so she can't get a job and she's been trying. And then just recently ended up taking a position as a waitress and was talking to me about how she feels embarrassed that she has to work as a waitress because people really look down on service industry workers in this country, which is just mind-boggling. Like, someone's got to do it, But also, like, anyways, so she was like saying, yeah, I'm now working at this hole-in-the-wall restaurant of sorts, and they're gonna pay me $10 an hour plus tips. Isn't that great? And I'm just sitting there thinking, I mean, the minimum in New Jersey, which is where she lives, is I think about a little less than $3. I don't know if it's changed since I was serving years ago in that
For the
state.
service industry.
Probably not. It's pretty common, I think, for I don't know if it's a federal minimum, but it's
Check
like
myself.
$2 and some cents, I think.
When I was
Oh.
working, it was like 248 or 38,
Yeah.
one of those. But
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, that's not something that anyone in the U.S. can survive on.
yeah, it's bad. It's not at all survivorable. But anyway. And she's
So
like,
in
$10 an
comparison,
hour,
the
that's good. I'm like,
$10 sounds good,
sure.
but
And she said it was good, and I was like, I mean, it's a lot better than what's legally required, which is but it's still not a livable wage at
yeah,
all. Like, right now the Democrats are trying to push for a federal minimum wage of 15 per hour, which 10, 20 years ago was definitely enough. It's not anymore. It's more like 27 or something like that for one person. Like, minimum wage was designed so one person could live off of that income. Just one. So she's got 2 kids and a deadbeat husband. And she's basically breadwinning for all of them. And she made about $150 yesterday. That's just like, I don't understand how she's able to survive at all off of that. But
I mean, sadly, to a lot
people
of
do it all
people,
the
that
time.
still sounds really good.
Mhm.
I mean, because there are plenty of people still making $7.25 an hour.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's nowhere in the country where you can, live a decent life on minimum wage at that level.
Yeah, but she lives in the New York City metro area. That's kind of pricey.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's sad. And like you said, like there's so many people who have it worse. There's so many people who have it the same, and it's just I'm sure there's people that have it better too, but it's just like that's the reality that most Americans are facing right now, and it's just kind of messed up, you know.
Yeah.
So
And we didn't
it's just very
sign up
exploitative.
for this. It's kind of like the credit score places where they keep track of all your stuff and determine who will give you loans or consider you a trustworthy person to rent a place to or things like that. None of us ever signed up for that, but somehow that's what controls our lives. It's in the same way we didn't sign up to be wage slaves. We were just born into a system where that's what is expected. And
That
I think
reminds
that
me of. Oh,
we need to
sorry.
start looking at our options, and I think we can do a lot better.
So what's super interesting is that hunter-gatherer tribes, on average, only work 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
And we work way, way more than that. I mean,
we had
I
to
just find
fight.
that mind-boggling.
Yeah, people had to fight hard to only work twice that every week. That like having an 8-hour workday and a weekend. That was one of the major gains of the labor movement.
Yep.
In the mid to late 1800s and early 1900s. They definitely made progress, but we backslid significantly with deunionization and stagnation of wages and rising inflation and a lot of different issues, but it hasn't been great for us.
So there's actually a couple different countries and a couple different companies in the United States, not countries in the United States, but, that are trying to see how a 4-day work week would work.
Mm-hmm.
And I am all for this. Having 3-day weekends would be great for people, because I feel like 2 days just isn't enough. You need that extra day to relax.
There are other countries already that have shorter work weeks. I think France is like 35 hours or something instead of 40. And here, even though we say 40, for a lot of people, it's still 50, 60, 80,
Yeah. And, as AUE is pointing out, says, I feel so refreshed after a 3-day weekend for sure. And one of the more useful things about something like that is that if people are working full days, they don't have a lot of time to do things like errands or necessary things like banking and etc. Not all people are fully connected to the internet, even though that should be something like a goddamn human right. Not everyone is hyper connected like we are sitting here. They actually have to go out into the world and go into bank branches and stuff like that, and they have to take off work in order to do that. And banks, they are not open on Sundays. Some of them are not operational fully on Saturdays. You have to actually go during damn weekdays. So having a floating day during the week where you're not forced to go into work would be exceptionally useful especially for service workers and retail workers.
Yeah.
And parents that need daycare.
Yes. Yep.
Or anyone watching children, for that matter.
I mean, and having these floating days, like for absolutely everyone in a culture that just accepts that, including the daycare workers and all the service workers and like logistics to support that and the awareness of it. I mean, like like the village helping itself, we'd have a society, an interconnected society, um, aware of everyone else's limitations, rather than one where everyone is constantly like stressed out and concerned about the fact that no one's able to like make the next thing happen, because you have to get there now, because you have to get back to work in the next 20 minutes, because you had to
Rat
go do your thing
race.
for yeah, you had to go you had to skip your lunch because you had to go deposit your check or
I mean,
whatever.
unfortunately
Yeah,
for
like
so
some
many
people
people,
who work and eat at their desk.
yeah,
You know who you
but
are.
you know, a lot of people don't even have enough time to really go anywhere. They have like 30 minutes for lunch or something. If you need
Oh
to
my
use
gosh,
the
yeah.
bathroom, you need to eat, you know, you like have to have food there and ready to just eat it and get back to work, you know.
That reminds me, so I have a friend in Singapore, and the work culture there is even worse than it is in the United States, which blows my mind. We were just like, I remember talking to her about it, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm lucky if I get to eat at my desk some days." I'm like, I'm like that's just nuts. That just blows my mind. Ugh.
Somehow I think if the workers were making decisions about these things, it would come out a little bit more favorable for the workers.
Well, and in the end, things still get done. I mean,
Yeah.
they might not get done instantaneously, or like roll off, like terrible products won't roll off at like 10,000 RPM or whatever crazy uh, pace that someone wants, but they're still going to get done and appear at a reasonable rate, but at least they won't kill people in the process,
Actually, you're
which is something
wrong.
that we don't want, or at least I
Wrong.
don't want.
You're so wrong. When you don't have to work long hours and productivity goes way up when we have more time for things and you're not pressured by our boss. There's actual studies on it, which if you
Yes,
remind
but
me, I
I
will
mean,
link you.
right, no, no, no. I'm referring to like obscene amounts of stuff coming out, because you
Yeah.
can
Well,
create
that's just
like
never gonna happen.
crazy
That's
amounts
just
of
not gonna happen
you
unless
can
you have
create
enough people working.
yes, but I mean like you can create crazy amounts of very very bad stuff at scale if you kill people, and we've seen that.
Oh, we're already doing that. Look
Yes,
at Amazon.
and we are. We've seen that happen. Of course, you burn down you burn down people with your factories when you do that, like the like Triangle Shirtwaist factory.
Mm.
Amazon's going to have some issues with that in the future because they have like intentionally treated people as like a replaceable commodity. They're like, well, we don't expect them to want to or be able to do this job for very long, but we're going to, you know, wring every last bit out of them we can while they're here, and then
Yeah.
cast them off in favor of the, you know, someone whose body hasn't been destroyed by this yet, or you know,
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
and eventually you go through the people who are willing and able to do that for you.
Well, that's also an issue with migrant workers too,
yep,
or just immigrant workers in general who do construction or any kind of construction work. You're like destroying your body by the time you hit like 30, 35. If you've been working that, like your back's done. You're done. It's just not, I mean, generally speaking, that's not everyone obviously, but it's just ridiculous.
and that is why construction in a lot of cases is referred to as backbreaking work.
Oh yeah.
And infrastructurally, construction is extremely important to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, something we also have to factor into, you know, like what we're paid and what we pay for things. You know, if the people on farms and building houses and whatever were all paid, you know, what they should be enough to actually live on in the U.S. in a reasonable way, and not, you know, bringing in immigrants that who can be extremely low paid, and, you know, have to go back to where they came from to actually live long term. You know, prices would be higher for us, but we would also have to be paid better, because at some point, you know, if you can't pay for the things you need to live, you're not going to go do the job, because what's the point of working and not being able to survive still?
I'd rather pay more for some tomatoes or some apples and have like the just know that those people are taken care of.
Yeah.
Than, I don't know. But we don't even need to do that. That's the thing. It's that the companies are just upcharging because they can. So I hate billionaires.
I mean, you know, they want profits coming from the people who are working for them, and then from the people who are consuming whatever it is, and they want to maximize the money that they get from both sides.
Jumping back a little
not
bit
ideal for
to
us.
like, oh, sorry. Jumping back a little bit to like service work and tipping. I think tipping's kind of evil, if I'm being honest. And the reason why I think it's evil, not tipping like you giving someone a tip is evil. It's like making the consumer pay your worker instead of paying them a livable wage. I think that's pretty messed up.
Me too.
Because you can afford, if you should be able to afford to pay your worker. I'm sorry, you just should. And if they get tips, awesome. That's awesome. That's great. That means that they're doing right by you too, because I don't know, most people when they think of tipping, they don't think I'm giving this person in particular money. They think, oh, I really like the service and the food and the atmosphere and all of this stuff at once, and that's what they're leaving a tip for. Or at least it's just something that I've noticed. I could be wrong. Disagree with me if you so choose, but yeah.
Yeah, tipping does put a problematic power dynamic between the customer and the service worker, where if the customer is in a particularly bad mood, it can strip the service worker of a much needed thing, like their livelihood, or even like puts like a lot of power in the hands of the consumer to enable abuse in certain
Like
cases.
Karen's.
Yeah, you could put it that way, or like even like enabling certain types of structural bias, like sexism and racism, like
Yeah.
outright bad behaviors, like in their face, that service workers can't speak up to, because they can just lose out on their livelihoods right there, especially if their managers are unwilling to stand up for them, which is very often not even the case throughout history, especially because a lot of the cases service workers are in the lower class. And that includes even in like high class restaurants, if should they have begun working there. And not only that, it puts people who go into restaurants in an interesting position. You'll notice people also don't find tipping. They don't like it very much, because you have to do calculations in your head.
Yeah.
Or you find it on your check, and you're all like, well, what do I do now? Press a button. And sometimes you sit there going, oh, well, which one do I choose? It can be a little bit of a moral stress. And a lot of the time I'm sitting there like, I wish that like there was just a single charge for the meal that I knew up front, and that the service worker and the cook and everyone was already being paid a certain amount. And that I knew that they were already going to be paid appropriately. And that if the server was behaving inappropriately, that it was going to be caught by the by the staff in the first place, because when people behave inappropriately at work, there's already guardrails for that sort of thing. When you behave badly at work, we already deal with that in particular ways in our society. You know, we don't. Our customers don't pay us more or less at like um, like for example, like a cloud provider. I might stop. I might terminate my contract. I don't pay the customer service person that I talk to on the phone more or less. I don't tip them. There's no other situation where I give someone a tip. Like, this isn't Star Trek. These are not Ferengi. In every situation that I go to, do I throw money at people? Restaurants are the only one. Well, okay, Lyft.
I mean, it depends on the establishment, but
Right, you know, restaurants and like food drivers and taxis and stuff like that. There's certain service industries where tips are. It's just it feels like it's very specific.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in some of those cases, like with Uber and Lyft, especially Uber, for a long time was telling people don't tip. The tip is included, you know, but there was nothing included. They just paid you low wages and told people not to tip you. You know, I know this from firsthand experience, and you know, it it was not great. You know, when they first came here, when I first tried it, you know, the rates were similar to a taxi, and you know, I was okay with doing it for a while, but they lowered the rates to the point where it was like a third of what a taxi would be. They upped their fees. They lowered what the drivers were getting, and people still generally expected not to need the tip.
Weren't they also caught stealing their tips at some point?
There have been multiple scandals about that kind of thing where it was usually something like they
Like
would
DoorDash?
offer people a guaranteed amount, and then they would say, "Oh no, that included tips, so we don't actually have to pay you that because you know you got some money from tips."
That's a serious issue with food delivery apps right now. Like, if you can, give them cash
Yeah.
directly to the person. Don't put it in a jar unless you want to. But it's just better to give them cash because then you know it's going to them.
Yeah.
So on that note, I have a serious question for you all. How do you feel about unions? I'm for them, personally.
I mean, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Sean. I should let you go first.
It's fine. I think that they've given us a lot of the largest gains in you know, quality of life and you know, workers' rights that we've had in the history of capitalism. They've been under attack for decades, and they had been, you know, seriously on the decline to the point where only like 10% of people were in a union. It's starting to uptick a little, and I'm very happy to see, you know, the union drives at Amazon, Starbucks, and other places. However, I don't believe that this is going far enough. I think that we can do better than just collective bargaining and trying to get a little bit more out of you know, the owners of the businesses. I think that the workers generally should be the owners of the businesses. And you know, that's obviously going to take you know, people really thinking outside of the box they're in, and considering what options, you know, they have, and what is actually going to be the most beneficial for us. But you know, I think we can get there, and if people are willing to look at these ideas, I don't think there will be a lot of pushback against it from workers themselves. It'll be propaganda from the people who don't want anything to change.
I agree with that. Especially because with this current, say, I feel like at the start of the pandemic, it's really been a big cultural push in the United States, at least. Also, I think worldwide, where everyone's just working remotely or started working remotely, and they're pushing people to go back, like companies and stuff. And the people that had to work in person, like again, service industry workers, people that work at grocery stores, essential workers, have been like, hey, wait a minute. And they're kind of like banding together, and that kind of thing, and pushing for these unions. And you can see with like Starbucks and Amazon and all those big name companies, they're like closing stores where people are trying to unionize, which
And
again is kind
illegally
of
firing
evil.
people.
And it's all they want to do is just not have to work super long hours and be paid what they should be paid, you know? I don't I don't
and,
understand why
and
they
not
have
be
to be
treated
so
like
greedy.
garbage.
It's not like a mom and pop shop and like where they're demanding something crazy. Like they just want to be able to live, you know? So
Okay, we seem to have stopped for a second there. Let's see, we could talk a little about Labor Day itself. You know, I feel like I should be more well versed in this history, but you know, it started out basically in the 1800s. You know, there was a lot of socialist type movement in politics around the world, and May 1st actually became you know, the first Labor Day, and I think that is the one I would prefer to focus on. I actually did a stream that day and then ended up only talking about the project and never getting around to actually talking about Labor Day. But you know, uh, September 5th, or well, the first Monday in September, the 5th in this case, became the US equivalent. But being divided from the original Labor Day, I think that it's been easier for its meaning to be lost. You know, now it's just a time where people get together and have, you know, a party at the end of summer. You know, maybe barbecue or something, and it's I think more associated with barbecues than it is with labor, and that's I think really unfortunate.
and fireworks.
Yeah, but you know, I think that right now we do have a resurgence of interest in labor movements, and I think that that's a good chance for you know, all of this to pick up in a positive way again. I think that having discussions like this about, you know, not just unions, but what else we can do beyond that is also an important part of it. Sorry, I'm being distracted a little bit by comments and stuff, but
No, that's fine. The comments are very useful. So Cogsmith had pointed out about, well, I mean, earlier Andrew had mentioned something from the Gigaverse from about, or a episode of Radiolab, which I believe is a podcast or something.
Yes.
Okay,
It's one of my
about the
favorites.
Gigaverse, about the gig economy. I've never listened to that, so that might be something for useful for people to listen to. And then Cogsmith came by and said that her boyfriend has recently signed up for food delivery, but is stuck on a wait list because
Oh
there's
wow.
too many drivers.
I wonder which one it was. Because I know that Instacart was having, which they're like grocery delivery, same thing. They were having like a wait list for that. But yeah, that's nuts.
I know we have a lot of agreement on things
Hi,
here.
Katie.
But
Sorry.
that's a chat thing. But I also want to make it clear that this is not just for people who agree with me. I want people who completely disagree. If we got some capitalist apologists, want to come on here and argue why we need things to stay the same, or we need to give everything to the billionaires.
I mean, I could play devil's
you know.
advocate if you want.
I mean, it's up to you, but I would, I'd like to hear from people who actually believe it or claim to believe it,
Well,
I don't want this to be just an echo chamber. It should be, we should really talk the ideas through. And, I don't think they're getting their side in here right now, but not that I think they have a good case, but I think people should hear the discussion,
so I used to have the mentality that, like, I don't know. I don't want to say I was like pro-capitalist necessarily, but I wasn't. So when I say I don't like capitalism, I specifically mean I don't like late-stage capitalism. Because I think some capitalism is okay. Now, don't freak out. But when I say that, I mean, like, I don't see anything wrong in a person owning their own business, which kind of entails capitalism there a little bit. Because, at least in my brain, I don't know. Because I just keep thinking about socialism and communism and democratic socialism and all that stuff. I mean, like, you can still own your own business in democratic socialism, but. And socialism, kind of, sort of.
I guess it depends on what you mean by owning your own business. Like, if you just do something yourself and call that your business.
That is a business.
Yeah.
You're selling product or whatever. But,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
so
but
here's a good
there's
example.
a big difference between you working at something and getting all the benefits from it, or you having a bunch of other people work for you to, then have you gain all those benefits.
Okay, so I'm thinking of two different situations here. So the first one that comes to mind is Andrew's mother owns a dog grooming and boarding business in New Zealand. She owns it. Joe, which is her husband, co-owns it, I guess. Like, she's like the main person, and he is there, and they have a couple employees. She pays them less than what she makes because she owns the business and heads it and does all that stuff, right?
Mm.
So that's one example. And then there's another one. There's this girl on TikTok named Madeline, whose last name I totally forget. The only reason why I even remember her name is because she has the same exact name as my mother. She owns a business, and she has 5 or 6 employees, and they make like, she's a fashion designer and they make clothes. She pays everyone, including herself, the same exact amount of money, but she technically owns it. So I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with paying yourself more money if you own the business because it's under your name than your employees. However, you should pay your employees a livable wage. That's how I think.
Yeah,
Which
I
is
mean,
still technically capitalism. So
I think that all of this stuff is kind of debatable and gets into more of a gray area than you have with like a huge corporation.
oh yeah, no, megacorps, no. But
I definitely think that small businesses are very important, and you know, even if we want to change the way these things are structured, it doesn't have to be immediate. You know, we can make changes over time to allow people who have built a small business to, you know, make whatever gains we think they need to make out of that, and ultimately transition to, you know, the form, the system that we would like to see, ideally, you know.
Hmm.
Sorry, we need producer looking through the comments and
It's okay. I think this is working.
it just, you know, I miss things sometimes, or the conversation gets paused. But anyway, what else would any of you or any of the chat likes to talk about?
Uh, you can pay people less money if they're disabled in this country. I'm just
Yeah,
thinking, what's labor related? And that just came to mind.
I mean, that's another one that's kind of complicated. You know, if you hire people who are less capable of doing the job that you need done, you know, you can see the argument for paying them less, but they still have the same needs for money. So, you know,
Well, that it gets it also like people. So you could work at Goodwill and have like ADHD, and they would still pay you less than minimum wage because they could still technically get away with it. And I'm pretty sure they've tried or have. Don't quote me on that though. I have to look into it.
I'm
But I know that
also,
they're like a main like aggressor, which is very strange because it's a thrift store
Well,
and
yes,
they
but also
do charity work.
well,
right.
they're not a great organization from what I've heard, but go ahead, Ken.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, Goodwill's paradigm is kind of supposedly all about giving people a not just the charity work, but it's supposed to be like or their concept was supposed to be kind of like an economic stepping stone for people to enter into and then exit out of in the retail space. But I don't really know like where they actually sit overall, because since I haven't taken a good look at them in a while, since A worked there for a while. But like any retail space, they experience a lot of turnover because of where Goodwills generally sit in the socioeconomic space, given the people that they hire and where they situate themselves specifically, and the type of um, uh, um, the how would I put it, the because they basically they recycle things that people donate to them in order to sell in their stores, in order to produce it, to reproduce it for resale. I tried to get a job there as well, but in the other side of the store, not as a retail person, but in their IT department, because they also have a logistics side. Interestingly enough, I did not end up getting that job, hilariously enough. While my significant other was previously worked in the retail side, which of course is, like all retail jobs, kind of crappy to the people that work there. Working retail is not a fun experience, I should add.
No.
Yeah, service labor is dreadful. I'm sorry to say.
I just want to clarify real quick that I'm also not saying that I want people with disabilities to be paid less. I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
say I understand why in the system that we have right now, why the employers would want that. But I think because those people still have the same needs, and because they're not worth any less as people, it's still not right to pay them less.
Right.
Yeah. There's really, I don't know. I see a lot on the Twitterverse. Uh, People, the main argument I see is kind of what you said, where like, well, they can't do the job description, but it's like they usually can.
Yeah, as long as they're, I
And
mean, like
even
if
if
you
they
could,
can't, I don't know. It's just also the way the disability is set up in our country is better than most places, surprisingly enough. But like, if you're on Social Security disability, you're not allowed to have more than like $1,000 or something in your bank account and savings, which is just like very weird.
Yeah, if you're disabled before a certain age, I don't remember if it's like mid-20s or 18 or something like that, then you can have up to 100,000, I think. But I mean, still, it's
I just
not.
don't understand why there are caps on that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you
I
not allowed
mean,
to have a savings if you're disabled? Are you not allowed to make a livable wage if you're disabled? According to a lot of people, no, because you are not able to do the work that a boss wants.
it's
And
the
that's
way.
quite sad. So, yeah.
It's kind of the way our social safety net in general is set up. It's all geared toward making you work if there's any possible way you can work. And, if you do any work, then, rather than, you know, being able to have that assistance plus what you can make to have a decent life, you have to deduct whatever you can possibly bring in yourself from what you get, and make sure you're always going to stay in poverty. And that's not great, in my
Just the man putting us down.
opinion.
uh,
yeah, Katie says, my thing about job descriptions is that most of them are able to make arrangements to do the job description for someone who is disabled to be able to do the job, which is what I was going to say, that if a job can make accommodations for someone who's disabled and still do the job, then they shouldn't be paying a disabled person any less to do the same job.
I totally agree, and I also want to say I understand there are some jobs that people who have certain disabilities are just incapable of doing. Like if you're
Yeah.
blind, you're not going to be able to drive a bus,
Right, in which case
for
they're not
example.
driving the bus. They're not taking that
Yeah.
job in the first place.
But if you're blind and you're, I don't know, you have
At a
to,
call center.
yeah, if you're at a call center, there's literally no reason why you should be paid less.
Yeah, like
Um,
you'd probably have a braille terminal,
yeah.
or something similar.
Oh, they
You'd
also
have an
have,
accommodation.
yeah, they also have like different setups you can do.
Yeah.
I know that, like, for instance, you could click on a picture on Twitter or something, and it'll read off what the image says or what the image is about. Like, there's certain programs that do that, just as an example. Or like if you're in a wheelchair and you're unable to lift 50 pounds and you're working in like a warehouse that's not Amazon. Just kidding. If you're working in a warehouse, you're gonna have to lift weights or whatever, or not weights, but weighted things.
And the
Then
delivery drivers
you
too.
literally can't do that. So like I understand that, but then it's like you wouldn't apply for that job anyway, I would assume. So, but yeah, I totally agree with that, Katie. I could see that. I just yeah, I just want to add that 2 cents in.
Katie has another comment here too, and I want to say appreciate people, putting some comments in the chat. It is helpful, and like the interaction. Sorry, she says the government making a cap on how much money a disabled person can make / save is messed up, and that they can't be married, let people live their lives. So if you're married, do they refuse you Social Security disability? Is that?
You can be married, but your partner can't make a certain amount, and you still can't have less than a certain amount in your bank account or savings or anything like that. So usually people that are disabled and are on Social Security, if they get married, they end up losing all of their everything pretty much. So it's yeah, it's not good.
Yeah.
Keeping the poor is poor.
Yeah, a lot of interconnected issues.
Very much so.
That's an interesting question.
Katie asks, how do you feel about older people signing up for jobs where they aren't physically able to perform the job duties? Do you feel it is the same as the job description situation?
I guess it would depend on the situation.
Well, I think
again, if they're not able to lift 50 pounds plus or whatever, and they have to do it in the job description, then I mean, like, you're not going to be able to hire them if they're not able to perform those duties. But if it's a call center, they can still be on the phone, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think if things are structured right and set up in a way that people with physical and mental disabilities and issues can deal with, that just about anyone can contribute in some way, but obviously not everyone can do every job.
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering if she meant, like, if she's, like, delving into ageism there a little bit. And, like, there's, when you hit a certain age, there usually tends to be a bit of a mental decline there. So I'm wondering if that's what she's getting at.
No, she's saying physically
Okay.
demanding. Because I mean, like, the truth is I mean, like, if you reach a certain age and you're no longer physically capable, that is, you are essentially disabled when it comes to physicality.
Unfortunately, with the way our bodies are put together, most people end up with back issues as they get older.
Yeah, decrepitude.
That's also a cultural thing, fun facts. Sorry, I'm reading what Katie said. No, I was responding to you, but I was reading what she said. Every time I get close like this, I'm like, what is going on? I can't read, I'm blind. But the back situation is Americans and Westerners in general, like, our backs go bad faster than those in like
Asiatic.
Eastern cultures because of the way
Yes.
we bend to pick things
Yes.
up, which is just so interesting. Sorry,
Yes.
being kind of a dork, but
No, it's true. Asiatic cultures have a tendency to squat, whereas American, especially Europeans and North Americans, bend over instead.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anthropology brain, Oh yeah, for sure. I think it also depends on how well you take care of yourself. Sorry, I was just reading what Katie said. But I have workers who are 65, 70 or older, and all of them are varying stages of health and work very differently. Yeah. I mean, as long as you're able to do the job description, I don't see why you should be paid more or less. So,
And I don't know how much longer we're going to keep the stream going right now, but Katie, if you want to come on the stream now or a different time, you know, we're happy to have you. Just have to send you a link.
Mhm.
And the same goes for anyone else.
did she respond?
Not yet, but
She probably will. I love
can,
her. That's my friend. She's like my sister. She's great.
She said, "Oh, okay, I appreciate the offer. Maybe another time."
sounds good. So is there anything else you guys want to talk about right now, or
Anything labor related?
Well, I think you covered a
Labor
lot
Day
of
related?
bases,
Yeah.
starting with basically modern corporate feudalism, passing through prison labor systems, uh, floating across well, billionaires, and commenting on the gig economy. There was uh, then discussions of disability and tipping economies as well, and then into like disability as it relates to age related issues near the end. I'm not even covering everything that you went through. I think that there was a lot of ground covered. Oh, unions, of course. I can't forget that.
Unions.
Yes.
all right, I guess we covered more than I thought. So
Yes. Well, I want to make sure that you are aware of the breadth that you spoke about before you sign off.
I mean, mostly I want everyone watching to know and to you know, consider coming on and talking some more. I need to talk to more people who disagree, and you know, anyone who wants to be here, just tell me what you want to talk about and when, and we'll set it up.
Mm.
So I guess it looks like we're wrapping it up for now. Sound good?
Sounds good. It was
Okay.
nice talking to you. Bye.
Yeah, you too. I'll see everyone sooner than you know, the distance between the last stream and this one. And thank you for the conversation to Katie and
There's a
Naomi
goodbye as well.
and Andrew and everyone else watching. Appreciate you being here. If you want to get further in touch with us, just go to OurVoice.social. There's a contact form, and you know, yeah, email you back, and
It's on my screen. I have it.
and we can set something up, or just talk there, whatever you want to do. All right, talk to you soon.